greetings, you earthlings. Gratitude, 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 gratitude. Let's give honor to the source, to the creator. Most High for making all this possible. Get your popcorn, sit down, get your emotions ready, whatever you feel, and so forth. Gratitude. Let's give honor to the source, to the creator for making all this possible. I was gonna write notes on what I'm gonna speak about, but let me just be grateful. Shout out to Bob Marley. Rest in power. As these messages and energies live on. One body, one mind, one soul. Oneness. It's gonna get very interesting. I gotta get my pistachio there. Well, that's my signal. I hope y'all ready. The warning comes before the pride comes before the fall. Okay. What if I told you? What if I told you? How should I jump in this? You can't really say what you're ready for when you dive into the water. My partner was reading something, and I'm grateful. I don't always have to agree to everything in a book, but when someone does read something, I don't have to I just get clarity. I get like, for instance, if I go to a museum, or if I go somewhere, I travel somewhere, and I see art, activations can happen through a lot of things. Activations can happen through just naturally in connecting with someone, seeing something, visually hearing something, um, you know, just natural abilities, spiritual abilities, some may call it clairaudience, clairvoyance, you know, more heightened awareness on things, or visualization, so many things. Again, I can go on and on. My partner was speaking about something, and somehow, some way, I got major clarity, major clarity. The book she was reading is called, I can show you, Eastern Body, Western Mind, Psychological and Chakra System as a Path to the Self. I'm going to show y'all again. In case you need to screenshot it or something. She was reading something very vital to me. And it brought so much awareness, so much depth, so much clarity. And when delivering a message as a messenger, there will be people who will confuse, deflect, defend, get all up in an emotional uproar because it challenges their belief system. Sometimes feeling that it was so stable, it will almost eliminate the idea of you being a part of their life, of you being part of what they're creating or what they have created. Meaning being a little butthurt because you speak your truth and so forth. I know most people don't know about the chakra system. Most people don't want to accept, which this has always been and will always be when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to consciousness, however you want to word it. These things have always been and will always be. It's a balance. Not everyone's belief system is the same. Some people come and they evolve, they change. Where am I getting at? What if I told you? When you look at the origins of the world, of different shades of people, of humanity, different hues, this is going to be so fucking amazing because I realize the beauty of all this. Now, I'm talking layers. And allegedly, some things may not resonate or be true for a lot of you. So what if I told you or expressed to you that when you see the origins of the world and you see the majority and the minority, micro, macro, let's start with the science of things. When you say dirt, not even just dirt, the different hues of dirt, let's use that as a representation of humanity. Everywhere you go, there's different hues. It's almost like Earth reflects the spectrum. We reflect everything in nature. The different hues, the different things. My hair, I know some people's hair looks like the bush. I know certain things out there moss trees that looks like hair, that looks like it's basically everything reflects everything. What am I getting at? The divine justice and judgment at play. And this is everyone. No one is exempt. No one is exempt. These pistachios are so good. Y'all bear with me. I gotta be authentic through this shit. Shit's so good. So, my partner was reading something on the chakras. And I might actually look into this. I mean, it's so deep. This is gonna have to be like multiple videos on this. Definitely. Oh my God, this is. I gotta hold this page and the other pages. It's so deep. So deep, so deep, so deep, so deep. Oh, the clarity I get just looking at it. It's pretty much talking about the certain chakras. I know there's other people that say, oh, that's more than what you know. That's cool, to each their own. I'm starting somewhere. I'm here expressing what it is that I need to express, and so forth. Returning to what things were originally are. Okay. Imagine the world treating a certain individual, and I don't mean just people, but a certain individual, women particularly. Imagine treating them or coming into your power from a false sense of power, having stolen and manipulated a lot of what you created as men, only for it to be exposed and something being recreated through that exposure, through that chaos, through that emotion. And this breaks it down even in the chakra aspect. So I gotta discipline myself. Two more. So I can get this going. Okay. I'll start with this. Okay, the origins of the world, we know. When you're talking about scientifically, when you're talking about, in a way, how everyone, in a way, is indigenous to wherever they grew up at. At this point in time, everyone has almost melanin, depending on where they are. but especially in the U.S. So let's go to the origins. The origins of this country, as I said before, is placed and has been rooted in the darker woman, as is everywhere else surrounding the country, in this world, on this plane, so forth. Meaning, everything has begun with the matriarch. There's no man that has existed that has not came through the womb of a woman. Now, other than that, not only when it comes to a darker woman who has been attacked the most, who has been manipulated, who has also manipulated herself and manipulated others through her also woundedness, but also through her disempowerment and how she been treated. I'm just talking in parables or in a way of polarity. Again, balancing out everything. I was telling my partner, I said, if you think that the scales or karma isn't going to balance out how people have been treated, even amongst their own, let me show y'all. There's so many things, so many ways I can go with this. Okay, let's push this to the side. The origins of this world to be so far it's darker, and to see how even the hidden hand or people who are darker, who most people don't realize, who have had a hand in how the woman herself has been treated on all levels and all nationalities, especially the darker woman, how the darker man had to be the very one who betrayed her. And in that betrayal, she began to betray herself and then betray others. That makes sense. So every day that a darker woman, especially who does not and is not connected to her roots, meaning her root chakra. I'm gonna break this down in so many levels. Her connectedness to this earth, to the spiritual, to her ancestry, and so forth, to her lineage. It's been a grave manipulation through humanity, yo. And it's funny, but at the same time, this is what's been also, through the exportation or even the exposure, that it's literally balancing itself out. Let's just say it's going to take or will take the efforts of not only the darker man but also the darker woman overall to bring forth an authentic, a truthful, or honest foundation to be recreated and rebuilt. Now, I have experienced women of many nationalities and shades, and I can say that from what has happened in my experience in life, they all suffer or have unknowingly and knowingly from an identity crisis due to this society, due to this wounded patriarchy. Most importantly, when I look at the chakra system, and this is energetically speaking, speaking on the basics, we know that the root of the chakra system, the root chakra itself, is centered, is focused on survival. Now, if I look at this country and I look at the origins of all and mostly this country and also the surrounding countries, the darker woman specifically has been the most devalued, dehumanized, on so many levels to where she has in the last 50, I just say in the last, eon, or just let's just say here in this country, speaking on that level of, the fact of the last couple hundred years, she has to have had to live in survival. And I'm speaking on this country specifically. And with that, that automatically creates an imbalance within her and her chakra system. Number one, the root chakra. Two, let me make sure I'm saying this correctly because I have to make sure that the sexuality, I believe. Let me see. Is it sacral or sacral or what is it? Sacral or solar? I want to say it's sacral, sexuality. That's number two. Three, the power of, the solar plexus. Four, most importantly, is the heart, the center. Five is communication, which is the throat chakra. Intuition. Six, that's interesting. Well, that says intuition here, but more so like the crown chakra to know. So one, when you're talking about a woman that has to have lived in survival for so long, let me show you how this has affected humanity. Hue, hue, hues. We're all different hues. If the origins of every fucking thing is dark, if the origins of everything that is dark, the ultimate betrayal, just scientifically speaking, is that of a woman that is darker. This is not about anyone being more superior or more, this person being inferior. That's been the misconception of the illusion of separation. There are women that can and have lived amongst each other. There are darker women who every day portray themselves and choose to enviously um, devalue the women that look like her and side with women that don't look like her and feel that she has an upper hand. I've seen it, I've noticed it. That being said, she's living in a false identity of empowerment. Shout out to someone important I know. Her name is Bobby, and she expressed to me someone who is right now in this mindset of battling or straddling the fence between seeing things black and white. And we don't realize how much we have seen things black and white rather than on the spectrum, rather than in the chakra aspect, the light aspect, in the hues and the colors of things, and not just skin color. I'm talking about when you look at the chakra system and how it unfolds, how the chakra, the number one begins with the root. When you look at a tree, the darkest part of the tree you do not see. The hidden part of the tree you do not see, which is the roots. So to break this down, the beauty of all of this is that my concept, my perspective on life, and people may argue me up, and I don't give a fuck because this is things that they know nothing of. When you look at, let's say, the tree of life, the root of the tree has to be people that are darker, because you cannot have a woman that is of a lighter shade to create a child that is darker. That's just science. That does not mean that she is less valuable. But when you have a woman that is darker, she scientifically, you research it, she can create a child of a lighter, complex child with different hues of colors in their eyes. That naturally will make her of natural selection of the divine order of things, the origins of where life began. Now, I don't care too much for religion because a lot of those things were purposely put in place to keep people looping from finding themselves. The chakra systems itself speaks about internal things. You're talking about survival in a woman that has lived in survival for so long, who that has naturally has a ripple effect not on herself, not on just the nations that she's birthing within her kids, but also entirety of humanity. When the woman that is specifically darker does not know her strength and does not know her power, and it has been given so many things to manipulate who she is, to manipulate her energy, to keep her from herself, to keep her from her ancestral roots, her spirituality, her knowingness of self. When you look at the chakra system in itself, how it breaks down the root of everything, which no matter, I don't care, I told my partner, no matter what you do, what shade of color you are, outside of that, on a deeper level, there is balance being restored in the natural order of what the darker woman represents. This is what the matriarchal is balancing out from the wounded patriarchal, from what women have displayed through their woundedness in the wounded masculinity, through their actions, through their being misguided by other people who have been trying to teach them that when you look at creation in its totality of things in the bigger picture, that they are not a part of creation. So psychologically, when you look at that crown chakra, to even visualize herself in creation has been wiped or try to eliminate even not only her but her existence when it comes to creation. This is why so many women battle with the fact of their identity. To even where it says the root chakra survival, it's like a tree. The tree knows it's here to be. That's what makes it a tree. When you look at how women, and specifically in this country, have been created, have been displayed, they don't feel a sense of being, to be. When you go to the next chakra, it's the sacral. To feel, to feel a sense of importance, of value. The third chakra, which is connected to the solar. Y'all correct me if it's sacral or solar, but it's to act, the action of things, the power. So when you see the wounded masculine displayed in a woman, particularly, and how she acts, how much of her survival, how much of her being uprooted, which put her in survival rather than a sense of security, and when you see the systems that have been in place to keep her looping through survival rather than a sense of security, in a sense of to feel like she belongs and to be, guess what? Those in itself, when you look at the oneness, or when you look at the, I say to Bob Marley, the oneness, when you look at just the natural order of things, of scientifically how everything has to come from the darker woman specifically, it is just the, when I look at the bigger picture of what the divine mother in itself represents, that doesn't mean that the creator and the most high, the energy doesn't speak through certain people or operates through certain people. It's a clear indication of how imbalanced the darker woman specifically has been throughout humanity, which has affected everyone. I'm not asking anyone to accept this or believe this, but when you look at, again, the origins, the glue, the root of what the tree of life represents, the root of what even a nation can rise no higher than its woman. You don't rise up and hold an image of, give women an image of uh, a male figure to not only visualize them in literally to give them misinformation or confuse them on even being a part of creation in itself. So what happens is you give them an image, not only something that don't looks like them, but you give them an image of other women, of this false empowerment that they're more powerful than them. And then you put those women in certain positions where they almost, as in a sense, reign over them, as if they're more superior, as if they're more valuable. So what that does, a darker woman naturally, depending on the demographics, have been placed in certain demographics or certain places where her survival is her priority. And when you look at the root chakra, she doesn't necessarily feels like she belongs or to be here. Feels like a sense of being here. So her value is the misconception of her value. She goes out and think that she has to give up these very things or give in or sacrifice her being here in her body, being secure, to be accepted, to be validated. So when you look at the history of even how some of those darker women even raised and grew up, some of those women who could not even raise their own kids, which are some women that are lighter shade, because when they came, when the women of lighter shades of different nationalities came here, they didn't even have the capacity to even know how to do that, to nurture themselves. This is why you will see pictures of women that are darker, in the survival aspect, in the wounded aspect, acting in a way that has never been natural, which is catering, nurturing, being there for everybody, even humanity. It takes her energy to keep and has kept this shit afloat to where it's being dismantled. This is the natural order of things being restored. This is the balance being restored. This is why a lot of the things in the corporations and a lot of things are crumbling in on itself. Simply because when you have women of a mass, you have women of when you have especially darker women of a mass quantity coming into their knowingness, returning back to themselves, the little girl that has been living in survival within that adult body for so long, and then connecting that to their lineage, and then connecting that to their ancestry, their ancestral, woundedness and so forth. Then that's when you see shit get shaken up. Then that's when you start, when people start to realize the importance of what not only who has played a hand in it, of people of lighter shades, the men that were specifically put into place to try to reign over them, to try to put them, in a disposition to keep them in this wounded masculinity, for them to never, these corporations, basically all these business, when they do go in these certain areas, when they do go feel like they got to work so hard to stay in there, but most of the people that they're around and surrounded with don't look like them, and naturally they're in this flight or flight, or they're in this, they don't feel a sense of being there or feeling like that because of what has been created in the last couple hundred years was never intended for them to be there in the first place. So they forcefully, through the grace of the Most High, through the natural order of things, slowly what y'all have seen happen will continue to unfold is that of those who are taking back their power, calling back their power spiritually, ancestrally, and as you become more empowered, you will, I don't like to use the term awaken, but bring more awareness to exactly what has been happening. And I was telling my partner, I said, for women that are lighter shades, specifically in this country, to act like they haven't been knowing what's going on with women that are darker, you're sick. You're mentally ill. You're disgusting. Because for you to ignore, even for some of you knowingly in your ancestrally knowing that some of those darker women, even there would even be none of you if there wasn't some type of significance of women that were darker to even nurture your fucking ancestors, your grandmothers who did not want to do anything, who did not know how to support you emotionally and so forth. That is how powerful when it comes to the organic and the origins of things of people who are darker, who naturally, and it's not always the case, it's just the fact of people of different shades and different hues have always lived amongst each other. Everyone around this earth and planet is not dark, blue, black. They're not that cup. No, there are different shades, and this has always been. What has happened specifically in this country, when you see how the attack of the darker woman in this country and so forth, from her survival to her sexuality to her power to her love to her communication, her intuition to her sense of what is that? Um, her thought, her consciousness, like you know, all of that keeps her grounded. Because when you look at the root chakra, it speaks about her groundedness. So when you see mostly of in this country of even just the hoods or the certain demographics, the trenches and so forth, that is all centered in survival. That is not centered in security. Because most of those Section 8, most of those things are literally of a reign of terror almost, but also a divine intervention to where things naturally are going to unfold. Where I've told y'all before, especially as women that are lighter shades, especially I'm gonna just use the term Caucasian, who pretend not to see what's going on. And the beauty of all of this, watch this, Jim. Everyone in humanity represents a fucking chakra. We all represent the chakra system. Some may use the term Gaia, Mother Gaia. Okay, everyone represents a chakra. Everyone here as a spirit, as a soul, or whatever, when you look at the fucking origins and when you look at the origins of darker people in this country and surrounding, it's not always, because there are people who are so-called thriving in other countries, as they say, or a false empowerment of it. Yeah, you have people that are in poverty. Yeah, you have people that are poverty. So, because it was really never intended that way. That is an imbalance naturally. That is a fucking imbalance. And so, how did that begin? You have people, as I've said before, the hidden black hand, the dark hand, who people don't realize that had played a major part in how even certain people of lighter shade came into their reign of so-called power. Only for all this shit to return to the origins. And what is the origins? The origins of people who that are different shades, especially darker people who sold out or betrayed their own people. If you think that when you look at the origins of women and so forth, that there wasn't a point in time when man was created and so forth, that 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 someone along down the line did not want to have more of a sense of power than another person, that created imbalance. Men portrayed women. Y'all want to think that, I'm telling you, you automatically want to think that women, from the story y'all got biblically, that women portrayed men first. Let me tell you something. There has been so much that has been hidden that is going to be revealed, and this is what's going to make so many people uncomfortable, because they're going to go through so much psychosis. They're going to go through realize there's been so much of a like, oh my gosh, like y'all been fooled so fucking much. Y'all don't realize, again, every day you see it play out. You portray yourself, you portray those around you. When you don't have a sense of security and you're living in survival, you're naturally going to project or going to create more of an instability if you're not willing to face what it is keeping you in that instability, keeping you in that survival. So when I look at the demographics of darker people, when I look at the energy that it represents, the energy. And that's not to say, shout out to Bobby when she was telling me this. I got to get returned to this when she was talking about, a brother that was, his black and white thinking of, how he doesn't like, what some people may say. You have a lot of people that's like this. I'm gonna use the term. He doesn't like the white people. Again, in his world, that could be true, and he has reasoning. He can have reason and so forth and all that. As I said before, I'm gonna speak on Brother Shabazz and Malcolm X. Those who know the truth of exactly what Malcolm was a part of and who he was a part of it with, mostly people that were darker, were the very people who betrayed him. How are you going to infiltrate? How are you going to infiltrate an empire or anything? Allegedly, as they say. But, those who know that there had to be something inside. But where am I getting at? When Malcolm had traveled and went outside of the country or went other places, he began to see people that were darker of different shades. Then that's when he, again, got this, expanded his consciousness, his awareness around, this ain't about color. This is deeper than that. This is much deeper than that. If you look at the origins of things, if you can get darker people, a lot of people will agree or say, agree to this and say, oh, yeah, if you can get people that are darker amongst each other to fight amongst each other and not live amongst each other, it's almost like you're naturally creating chaos amongst people who naturally at a point in time, eons ago, or, live amongst each other. How do you create captivity and slavery? It did not start with people that are lighter shade. Because if the origins of everything is darker, this is where the fuck your confusion has come. You've allowed people that are darker to tell people that are much lighter, to tell you that are darker, that this is why your people have been in captivity. And not realizing that a lot of you do your ancestry. If you learn about shit, you will notice that a lot of your own people also sold your own people out, in ways to where they had to sacrifice to even keep your people afloat or alive. They had to lie. They had to manipulate. They had to do anything to live, to feel a sense of belonging. So again, when you look at the origins and the energy of what humanity represents in a chakra aspect, the United States is the root chakra of the United States. Is of the origins of people that are darker. So what does that tell you? If the origins of this country is darker people, right? Where the fuck do you think the power is going to return to? And I don't mean in a power way to where it has been, where you got these uppity ass darker people, you got these people that live a certain way who don't really give a fuck about the kids, who really don't give a fuck about, how humanity or people evolve. And that's cool. That's how I felt about the brother who made certain comments about how he don't like people that are, certain people. He don't even know, when you know about the freedom riders or other things that have happened, there are people that are lighter that sacrifice themselves to even make sure that some people were in safety that were darker. This has happened through your Underground Railroad and so forth. They never told you this in school because all of the imagery they give you is mostly in pertaining to people that are lighter. They're not giving you images of some people who are writers, scholars, and shit like that, who originally were people that were darker. The poets and all that, the Da Vinci's and all that, all those people were darker. They're not going to tell you that shit. You cannot have the origins of everything being a certain particular, pigmentation or shade. Y'all have to realize a lot of what has happened and what people have created when you look at these communities and so forth is simply from what they took time and effort. Is literally y'all are trying to cling on to shit that has literally been built upon hatred, racism. Why are you wanting to cling and hold on to something like that? When you look at what that is rooted in, hatred, that is not a thriving society. That's why this country is crumbling in on itself, because the origins of this country is darker people. The origins of this country is darker people. It's darker women. Chiefess. The origins of this shit is darker people. Were all those darker people of grace and righteousness? Absolutely not. You had chiefs. You had a lot of people that, again, they gave over their own people. They did a lot of things. They allowed a lot of shit to happen. So with that being said, I'm just a messenger and sending a warning to where, as much as these neighborhoods, these communities have been built just for certain people to thrive, I drive through this shit and I was telling my partner, like, fuck, there's no depth to this shit. It's just buildings. It's just certain things. And then what they can no longer run from, no matter how lighter the shade the community is, what they can no longer run from is the spiritual aspect of everything that is being illuminated right now. The soil, the history in the buildings, the spiritual significance of that shit, the ancestral things that have happened. How the fuck can y'all think y'all gonna forget about the origins of what has happened here? How you balance that out? I told my partner, I said, if you think that things are going to be balanced out to where, I've always said, the last shall be first, where things are not going to be reconstructed, rebuilt when it comes to the darker communities, especially the ones that have been the mothers that have been living in survival, because this has to do with the balancing out of the chakras and humanity. When you look at humanity, the darker aspect of things, because everything comes from the dark, the tree. Everything begins with the roots, the darkness. That shit reflects the spectrum. That shit reflects everything. So when you have darker people imbalanced, there is no fucking balance. There is, when you have the darker woman specifically living in survival. You have no love. You have no healthy communication. You have a woman that don't know how to lean to her intuition. Don't know how to have a healthy connection with her sexuality. So then guess what you have? when she's not able to speak her truth through her throat, when she's not able to see herself in a country, in an environment, in a place where she originally, her ancestry originally created all this shit, and you expecting her not to have emotions, not to be angry, not to rebel, and then whoever she created with that, as well as darker being, not to rebel. Then the crown aspect to know, the sense of her knowing. What else? To love naturally what she here to do, but that love being displaced because she's been given to everyone but herself in her heart chakra to act. Her acting has been almost like, when you act on this world stage or you're an actress, her acting has been more towards being so much of a woundedness in the masculinity that she doesn't even know how to. It's almost like she created a false identity on being an extra in a fucking movie in this country, to be an extra for your dismantling of your Hollywoods and all those other places, all those movies and shit that has literally made her feel like an extra in her fucking country, in her existence of everything that has been here. Her sense of feeling safe. That hasn't been here in this country. That hasn't been here anywhere else. A sense of to be here. How the fuck are y'all going to think that karma isn't going to balance out when it comes to those women? Those women and their ancestors, their ancestrally, their ancestral, their lineage for over time, for you to tell them that they don't belong here? And for a lot of y'all don't even know your fucking history, ancestry, especially you a lighter shades, especially those of you are lighter shades. How is it that you know certain things, but you have literally built corporations, universities, and so forth off the hands of other people just to keep the people that are darker playing your sports, doing these things, doing, keeping almost like keeping them away from destroying what you built through hatred, not through love, not through a sense of really security. Because if it was really security, why are y'all in these communities? Your false sense of thriving is really survival. Because your mindset is literally trying to survive people that are darker. So when you look at the minority of this country, most of you won't even fucking know that most of your ancestors came here. But when you look at the majority of the world, it's darker. A lot of your ancestors came here to thrive, to actually survive. Other people that were lighter than you. Other people who conquered other places. Who 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 sided with people that were darker to purposely keep your own people in captivity. You actually, like, a lot of you actually think that you are secure. This is why you see certain people now letting you know you've never been secure. You have the most guns, you have the most artillery, you hide in the mountains, you hide in different places. This is to you Native Americans. Not all of you, the ones you know what I'm talking about. You sided with people to be against the very people that were darker shades who gave you your knowledge, your wisdom, and so forth. Only for that shit to backfire on y'all. And this is karma playing out through people of all shades. I told y'all before, there are people that are darker who cannot stand the sight. And that's something internally and ancestrally. Who cannot stand the sight of people that are look like them. And they'll do anything to keep them in a place of stagnation or survival. These are people you're not going to see that will be brought down and so forth. With that being said, this is why there's so much divine intervention coming down the pipeline darker women who have lived in imbalance or survival, who have really suffered at the hands of people of all different shades. But most importantly, especially the men who are in certain places, who are part of certain societies, ovens, cults, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Shout out to Putin. He know what's going on. A lot of these people y'all think y'all so against. Those that know, that's in tune, know exactly what's happening. Those who are against it, they have no sense of awareness. They're not going to evolve. I know exactly what's happening. And that was the illusion and the spell to want me to even be against the fact of what was really coming through the clarity, the awareness, and the order, the new order of things. Because most people are so imbalanced, so the hate within them, the emptiness. They would never want to see people darker in a place that are really thriving. And it's not all of them. I mean, in a place where the resources are created for them to thrive, to come out of that survival. I was telling my partner, I said, wow, when you look at humanity, darker people represent the root chakra. I was like, whoa. When I look at the U.S., darker women represent the root chakra. She, the matriarchal, reflecting everything that men represent, she births the leaders that you see. So that being said, when I look at the orders of my mother and knowing what's happened with her mom, my great grandma, and so forth, how they've been treated, the opposite of what is alignment with love, power, truth, their sexuality, how they've been over sexualized or dehumanized and so forth, how they have been living in survival, you know, trying their best to survive, trying their best to just not even survive, but trying their best to just find a place of sense of security. So when you even look at the corporations in place, it was never intended for women that are darker to find a sense of security. And I don't care who you are, especially women that are darker that I know. I don't care what you have obtained when it comes to um, finding your sense of security and so forth. How you doing? Um, and that's the thing. You've been bamboozled to try to find your sense of security. I mean, you didn't even realize that when you look at the root of everything, it's always been within you. I'm not saying all of you, but some of you that I know that, you know, you have gotten to this place and don't realize how much, like how imbalanced you have been. Like when it comes to your chakra, when it comes to you energetically speaking. Yeah, you get out there and created this false identity around security. Because when you are a part of associations, societies, groups, and all this bullshit, when you are a part of that, the the root of everything is a sense of security. Tell me I'm lying. And then even with that, when you're talking about how y'all ruled by Venus, you're talking about for one honesty, um, attention, attention, and what is that last one? Honesty, attention, and did I write it down? Honesty, attention, and oh my God! Every time I come to this, when you naturally see, especially women that are darker being treated in this country, when you talk about honesty, truth, no, honesty, attention, and oh my God, it's always the one. Honesty, attention, and men is what? Mars is men, so you're talking about admiration, Oh yeah, is it truth? No, that's honesty. Honesty, attention. Oh my gosh, what is that other one? I keep coming to this. That's why I gotta have. But anywho, the Venus aspect of what women are simple and ruled by. For one, in the last couple of 100 years, in the last, what is that third one? That I said women are ruled by. Is it honesty, attention, or what's the other one? Honesty, attention. Man, what is that other one? I know men is sex, admiration, and respect. Women is Venus, so you're talking about honesty, attention. It's always that one. I have to create another video. I want to say true, but that's honesty. But y'all simple, so it's honesty, attention. What? No, it wasn't security. It's okay. But but anywho, with that, um, again, when you look at the foundations and just the origins of this, there hasn't been no honesty when it comes to women that are dark in the last couple 100 years, like the reciprocity and honesty. The honesty of who they really are, what they come from, who built who created what was kept from them spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and so forth. There hasn't been mutual respect. There hasn't been mutual relationships and partnerships, and even in business, in the last couple 100 years. Yes, thank you. That was, man, grateful for my partner. Pleasure, and that's what it is. When you look at the origins of this country and even darker women and how they've been treated and so forth, everything, there hasn't been honesty. When you look at the root chakra, there hasn't been honesty. So when you don't give someone honesty, how could they thrive in life? They're gonna naturally live through survival because once you create a foundation upon dishonesty, not only from that, if they're living in survival and they're not honest with themselves, then they're gonna continuously, and what you have seen happen ancestrally with the mothers, the grandmothers, and so forth, if they haven't been telling their daughters the honest truth that you come from spirituality, or this is your spiritual practice, this is what your grandma and great grandma did, and all forth and so forth, then they're giving religion, then what are you building? Not only are they giving religion, they're giving an image of someone, for one, that doesn't look like them, and also it's not a matriarchal figure. Hmm. Hmm. So what does that tell you? That automatically, visually removes them from a sense of being here, a sense of belonging. And that keeps them looping through the idea that they gotta look through someone visually that doesn't look like them for so said codependency, said attention from, to get that certain position. That's what a lot of you don't realize you're doing. This is what I'm here to do. Again, you're ruled by naturally Venus, honesty, attention, and pleasure. A lot of you, when you see like the shit that's been displayed, oh my gosh. For one, how the darker woman and how all women, because again, when you look at the origins of things, of how the darker woman, her identity in itself affects everyone. It has a ripple effect on everyone. Um, that's why you have some women that are lighter shade wanting to look like them, and then you have women that are darker that don't even want to look like themselves. And that's the first, that right there is a sense of survival because they feel like they have to dress a certain way to get this position, to get this role, acting, to feel a sense of being, to feel a sense of security. So they don't even know in the last couple 100 years, when you look at your Hollywoods, when you look at your entertainment industry, this is exactly why you see artists play this character or this role, and throughout time you will see the false identity they develop within first, because there's no sense of security, but through a sense of survival. This is why they change so much of themselves, to make themselves look opposite of what they really are, or even just the fact of hating themselves. And it happens even with lighter women that are lighter women. And also, it's like they through their so much hatred of darker women. I've seen through my experience, through the industry, through fashionists, through how people have created their businesses, through so much of their hatred. They use their energy, their magic, and everything. They conjure up things to even try to copy so much. When you look at designers, when you look at certain things, to copy so much of what they hate. And I'm like, whoa, they copy so much of what they hate. And so even with darker women, similar. For them to feel a sense of power, for them to send like, let me go back in here because it's good to where I'm getting at. For them to feel a sense of being or belonging, they create an identity around trying to conform to not only a society, to a community, to a place. Even when they talk, when they get around certain people where, they'll talk aggressively to their children and people that look like them, but then they get in a certain setting and that false identity, that their false sense of security through survival, they change their voice, their attire, and so forth. I'm not attacking, I'm not devaluing anyone. I'm just a fucking mirror. The world now has to see its reflection. So again, y'all don't realize how much of a polarity this shit really is. So this is why you see paraded on social media the very thing of how people are trying to survive through their instability of what security is. And so what they do, how women, you're seeing them portray themselves sexually, over sexualizing themselves because they don't, beginning at the root chakra, they don't have a sense of safety or security. So through survival, they have to get a certain amount of likes. They have to get a certain amount of things to live, to feel like they live, to feel a sense of being. That's why they portray themselves as such on, gyrating or do whatever the fuck they want, uncover themselves, because it's like to feel a sense to be here. So with that, a lot of people don't even realize in their marriages and relationships, they don't have a partner, they don't have no one there. Social media has them, or, the world has them in a way. It's like they don't even feel a sense of safety. They don't even feel like they need to be here, so they're more on social media than they are in themselves. So that's what you have been seeing play out through humanity. Humanity has been, that's why when I look at communities, they have created communities, and through their ignorance and stupidity, they literally have built things from an energy, not even valuing and acknowledging the ones who came before them, who supported them to create it. For them to even feel a sense of safety and security. So with that, they push out the ones who actually gave them the pass the fucking torch to them to even help shape and mold and build. The same architects, the same people who built your Washington D.C., the same people you have seen built all this shit. And then for them, the men who are so prideful and wounded in ego, for them not even acknowledge the fucking matriarchal. So when you see the women again in this false empowerment of them using in the third and second chakra, the solar and sacral, for them to use their energy just to grasp the attention of men in a false empowering way, which really naturally men are ruled by sex, or part of them, Mars aspect, the sex aspect is rooted in the very root chakra, the sexuality, which is the sacral, and then the solar plexus is where their power comes from. So those lower natures in itself, which my elder was speaking about, how when you look at the energy of people that are darker, what has happened when I say they are represented by the lower chakra, or even the energy of, and this is not in a devaluing way, in order for humanity to evolve, you have to come and return to the origins of what created it. And when you look at what seeds have been planted, and when you look at a tree and the roots of the origins of things, like I said before in my previous video, who do you think you have to come back to for the solutions for anything? The originators. This has nothing to do with someone being superior. It's just the fact of, in order for you see the problems, no one's gonna know deeper from a perspective of a darker man and a darker woman, know and find the solutions for people that look like them better than them. So what you have had is that you have systems that have been in place not to find solutions for your ass. Their solutions was just for them, and even the even the disempowerment in that was not only was it created for them to the illusion of thriving. Now the karma is returning to see exactly what they were trying to do, falling and crumbling on itself. The judicial system, the financial system, everything physically that they have created, whoever supported it behind the scenes as well. Just like the Wizard of Oz. To find out, who was the wizard or who was, you know, casting the illusions, only to find out the nightmare that they've been living in. Because for them, the American dream, the polarity of that is an American nightmare. Because to you, you would think, oh, your American dream is to live in a neighborhood where you don't have violence or you don't have this and your kids are thriving and so forth. Okay, so the American nightmare is for who? You've been supporting the American dream only for you to survive or only for you to so-called survive, but you call it thriving. Only for other people who can live in certain places who really have been thinking that they haven't been thriving, but they really have, but they've been told that they've been surviving. And it's not to say they haven't had a poverty or survival mindset, but this is where you get the illusion of shout out to Bobby saying this, and I got to return to this when she was saying, some people that are darker have this mindset that they're so against people that don't look like them, but don't even know the entirety of how, when you see capitalism and who's supposed to thrive and who all are a part of that, and even the fact of how, what is it? Did you say classism? The different classes, when you're talking about lower class, middle class, and so forth, there are people of all shades in that shit. So a lot of this has to do with not only the consciousness, but it has a lot to do with even the mindset. If I can look at in certain demographics, when I go to certain demographics, a lot of those people don't know what abundant mindset is. A lot of them people are so focused on the root chakra aspect of still trying to survive, so their focus mostly is on money, on working. That's your lower class. It's just like a lower chakra. So the illusion that has been cast upon humanity, and even from your leaders, your bishops, even from the community level and so forth, and expanding on high, not that they're higher than anyone, is that to even convince people or humanity that just because of your class, your status, and so forth, that you actually, because this person has more resources than you, then they're thriving more than you. That's utterly bullshit. When it comes to the awareness of expanding the consciousness or the awareness around humanity to see the homelessness, when you have these big ass golf courses and then most of the US in itself is vacant, when you actually have land, when you actually have things that are not even being used, such as houses that are vacant, when you actually have people that are so greedy because their false empowerment of even shows and reflects their imbalance within their chakra system. Y'all don't even realize a lot of these leaders, a lot of these people are literally operating from a chakra system. They're literally are sent here, and as they speak through their throat and reflect back to you what y'all collectively have created, and how they give you all these characters to focus your energy. They give you these people, these entertainers, these people to focus your energy, whether sexually, your love. Look at how the love has been displayed from how, look at your movies, look at shit that has been displayed for even a love story to exist amongst darker people, there has to be some type of pain and trauma connected to it. Notice how a lot of movies and a lot of people of darker shade that have been literally put there to just focus, to keep the focus on women that are darker, to keep them actually feeding them the illusion of staying in to be a single mother, not to thrive amongst each other, not to build and create a village of the origins of what the fuck y'all come from as tribes. The hoods ain't nothing but a resemblance of a division of the tribes and villages that we created. They took the shit Then you have your German villages. You have your villages in certain communities. The very thing that we shared with people, they took and created. And the very thing they thought that they took and can hold on to, because you can't hold on to anything because you can't receive with a closed fist. The very thing they're holding on to, they eventually have to let go through their own suffering. So imagine being given a knowledge or given something only to shatter into, the illusions of people to make them very uncomfortable. So with that, I'm supposed to do this for all women so that y'all can bridge, so that y'all can realize that throughout generations and eons, y'all always lived amongst each other. Go to the root of seeing who the fuck is projecting and keeping y'all in the spell of not knowingly want to live amongst each other. You're still holding on so tightly to the past and to the pain of your repressed shit. To where some of you, I keep telling you, you are going to create communities and villages and so much more with women that may not look like you, because guess what? Some of those women have done and will do the inner work. And some of the women that look like you won't do the inner work or face their traumas and face what's going on in their root chakras, what's going on in their solar and sacral, and what's going on in their heart. The energies of y'all lineages reflect the fucking chakra system. What is that? Survival, sexuality, power, love, communication, intuition, and your crown chakra, your clarity. And once you realize that as women and matriarchally, you will realize how, when you think and when you see this divine mother, you'll realize how much of y'all as humanity have represented the dysfunctional, wounded mother, which you have been giving birth to men and these leaders that y'all see reflect back to you, that you so desperately want to attack, want to project on and so forth, without acknowledging your role and your enabling to those very men that you gave birth to, and not even holding yourself accountable and holding them accountable, letting them know that your consequences of your actions, there are consequences. Their scales will be balanced. That is what consequences are. For what you put out is what shall be returned. Y'all are getting the return on your harvest in this country, in the countries surrounding. The leaders, the people. Woo, it's coming out. The people. When you look at other countries too, that people have been living in survival. People that live in fucking trash. People that live in places that they won't show you. They go for Africa too. They go for all these countries. There's poverty everywhere. To you leaders, the karma is coming to you. You are a reflection of your country. And I always tell you, until you acknowledge the importance of the woman, especially acknowledging the darker woman first, then you will never get to the root of your problems. I'm not saying not acknowledge all women, but until you acknowledge what has happened to the darker woman, you will not thrive. You shall not thrive. And also, the things that are coming to women that are light of shade that only know what's going on. How you expect your lineage to thrive? You have created a false identity as well, around the very men who created a false identity around empowerment. To just simply empower themselves. They're self-righteous. So they don't even like you. Don't even like women. Look at your religion. It reflects that. Most of your religion is so patriarchal driven through a false empowerment of righteousness that they truly don't acknowledge the woman equally or even as a reflection of power. They gave birth to you. How the fuck you ain't gonna acknowledge a woman? How you don't acknowledge the woman first in your religion? Okay? How you don't acknowledge the woman first in religion? How? Make that make sense. Y'all ain't here. Those who are eyes will see. She is the closest thing to source. How? Because she allows everyone to come through the womb. The womb is a connection to, through the portal. She is a connection to the Creator. There are women too that have to come to the forefront and speak their truth as well. They knowingly know exactly what they've been doing. Y'all keep thinking that there aren't women behind a lot of this shit, these covens, these cults, the shit that's going on in your Hollywoods, in if you think that there aren't women, and this is sometimes people are so wounded or so disconnected, they don't even realize what they've been enabling. So I don't blame you. A lot of y'all have been in an abusive relationship with the United States. A lot of y'all in other countries are in an abusive relationship and you're trying to escape. You're trying to get out. And you're afraid. And I'm telling you from experience, anyone that has been in anything abusive, emotionally manipulative, been in anything narcissistic and controlling, your leaders, your countries, y'all in a relationship with an abusive society. You're in an abusive relationship, manipulated relationship, and so forth. That's what you in. They abuse you. How they didn't? They abuse your grandma. They abuse you, and so forth. That's why a lot of these men that are Caucasian, their healing that they're going to go through is to acknowledge their role in so much they have done. Not only just to darker men, but darker women. But they first got to be honest with themselves. Because once they be honest with themselves, then the women that they're with can be honest. But this is what your country and all this is being ruled by. And women that are darker, y'all allow this shit. That's being real. Y'all allow that. The more you keep being honest with yourself and choosing not to evolve, the shit will continue. And your reality that is not mine. But for some of them that know, the more you keep being a part of this shit that's harvesting your energy, being part of these things, the first thing you're gonna say, oh well, how are we gonna live? Where we gonna live? How we gonna survive? You've been living in survival for this long. Look at the monetary system. Everything going digital, baby. Everything's spiritual, baby. Look at everything that's happening. Look at the housing system. Who you think they're gonna have to run to? Who do you run to feel this empty? Who do you run to when I need love? Who you think they're gonna run to? You think that's a great song. That's a channel song. Who you think they're gonna run to for love? Who have they always ran to for love? Hate can't drive out hate, only love. And that's what most of you fighting with. One of the greatest things I've learned, if something wanted me to hate myself, how could I thrive? So then I began to love the parts of me, and even in loving the parts of me, I had to learn to love the versions of myself. And even a part of loving that is loving the people who projected the hate, who treated me certain ways as a little boy from the women, and then in society and so forth. But one of the most important things you need to remember, in loving, you can also distance yourself. You can love people from a distance, and that's what a lot of you need to know to do. Love and leave. Those of you that you know how you leave a relationship that you know no longer serves you. Never say you didn't love that person. You just realize that you outgrew it because you grew, because you learn to not settle. And that's all you're doing. But survival is settling and not being limitless, not planting your seeds everywhere. That's all that is. Some of you don't realize like how much you've been in survival. Your lineage has been in survival, and you're trying to find a sense of clarity, trying to find a sense of balance. When you look at the origins of a lot of things, why is it that there's so many women and things? Those empires, those nations thrive. A nation can rise no higher than this woman. And if y'all think, when I sit back, I see so much passive aggressiveness in communities Y'all don't even realize something for you. So these are to women that are a lot of shade, especially in Caucasian communities or even of different nationalities. Y'all are so passive aggressive towards darker women. You don't even know it sometimes. When you convince yourself that you're thriving, you're thriving by not dealing with them. Until something happens to you, until something happens, natural disasters, or something happens where your greatest lesson, karmically, is going to have to return to those very women that you hated, which is reflects what you going on inside. And it's okay because a lot of people don't want to live amongst each other. I'm not telling you, but the world is being created for those that do, and that is not all of darker people. This evolution is for those who live amongst each other, who deserve peace, harmony, to thrive, to build, to create. Everything that does not reflect the old world. A lot of us had to get through these things to see exactly what it is we're here to create. That's what's so funny about all this shit. I be sitting, man. I'm like, wow. The world, other people try to tell me I'm not thriving, I'm not prospering, I'm not growing. How? I look at the peace that I obtained. When I look at how much that I've cleared out my root chakra not to be in survival, and through that process, I had to have experiences of going through the jobs, the shelters, um, the relationship, the if you want to use the term white supremacy, darker people are literally in this country mirroring back those who are in certain places, are literally mirroring back the survival of this economic system. And I keep telling y'all, when y'all rise out of survival, everything crumbles. What does that mean? There won't be no policing. There will be no more policing. There will be no more violence because that reflects survival. It's just like animalistic behavior, nature. There won't be no more this housing and school system because when you look at certain demographics, how much people have to work and survive to even obtain a house that costs that much? Y'all think that's normal, but y'all call this upper class, middle class. That's bullshit. That just literally shows you can still have all the money and still have a false identity or a false sense of security. That's what they built it up on. They built. They know who they are specifically. It built. It was built, or they built it specifically for them to survive. I didn't say a sense of security, to survive. How is that going for them? It's funny how the very thing they created, this one person is reflecting back to it, literally mirroring back to them the same hatred that they created. It's mirroring back to very things that they hate within themselves. This very character that's standing for y'all politically. And everything he's doing to position the people and pay attention to those who are in an uproar around it is because he's shattering all of their illusions. And with that shattering of their illusion, it literally is like a building being dismantled, or what do they call it? A demolition. That's what it is. It's a demolition. And y'all, and a lot of you can sit back and watch and act like you don't see what the fuck going on. You're gonna be able to see it through people's health. You're gonna be able to see it through a lot of things. That's what's so beautiful about it. They really can think I was not thriving this whole time. How was it ain't? Really? What? A lot of you specifically, once you walk away from certain things, your protection level. Once you move away, I don't give a fuck if you move down the street. Or even, it's so beautiful because a lot of people are going to shift out of the country because you got to realize what has happened here. When I talk about the beauty is that a lot of things are going to be restored, but specifically for certain women and men, when you look at why a lot of us are supposed to move away, is because we no longer want to be tolerated. It's like the nerve of people in certain demographics to treat other people like, oh, I gotta tolerate them as if you've always been here. It's like you've. It's so funny to me how this country act like you've had to tolerate darker people and their problems. You got to tolerate, as if we've been given the same resources, opportunities, and so forth as you have. And that's from experience, but also I am aware of what is it, classism or whatever. At the same time, we still cannot ignore the real issue of the roots of things, seeing how the darker woman has been treated, and that's coming from one. Seeing how darker men have been portrayed, and when you see how they have been portrayed specifically, it's because so a certain people can believe that they are surviving, and they have to survive amongst them. So it's like an animalistic behavior. This is the jungle. This is the Amazon. The tiger respects the lion. There's certain things in the kingdom or chiefdom or in the world that respects each other. It's called the natural order of things. And where has not been in natural order. So that being said, of course you're not gonna have people wanting world peace or unity and so forth. Because it's their objective, it's their mission to keep that um, intact. But they're miserably failing. They already failed. They ain't even failed. It's just like they can have all the money, pay whomever they want to, do whatever they want. But the divine is always 20 steps ahead. Always watching. Nope. Nope. Their reign of terror is over with. Only for divine intervention is come in place. You're gonna see people try to jump on the bandwagon. You're gonna see people try to say, I've always did this or I wanted to do this. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. This on all levels. Celebrities, it don't matter. No, you didn't. That's why all of them follow from grace. You're just gonna be looked at as somebody normal, just like everyone else. No, you didn't. Like I said, your leader is a reflection of y'all. Even what you consciously or unconsciously created. It's a reflection of you. And this country and these people love to blame each other instead of take accountability. Well, life is about to force you to take accountability, especially to be responsible for yourself. That's what accountability is. This nation, leaders and people, no matter their shade, hasn't given the opportunity for women, especially them, for to be darker, to actually create things that for them to be self-sufficient. And what do I mean by self-sufficiency? For them to be emotionally stable, for them to be secure, for them to not worry about their safety, for them to not be concerned about if they belong, if they should be here. People don't even realize, like, some people that were darker gave some people that opportunity to do that. Their ancestors. And what did they do? They turned their backs on them. They betrayed them. That's why a lot of there's a mutual trust. But you're gonna see a lot of that be rebuilt. It's funny 'cause I be sitting there, I can pick up on the energy of how people clothe themselves so well. And I could just see when I say no depth to them, is that their imagery or their sense of security is just let's just say it's like a tree with no roots, or it's like a tree bearing no fruit. So it's like it's literally some people are just skin deep. That's it. A lot of people relationships skin deep. That's it. Yeah. When it goes back to the origin, especially with the darker woman, how she's been portrayed. Where is that at? Her power. She's been disempowered. She has no value. And then you have the medical system and all everything else who have created, who have preyed upon all that is when it comes to even how she's portrayed sexually, through the abuse, through the manipulation, through her sense of safety and survival, how her love has been portrayed through only just trauma bonds, and then also how she has a look towards other women that don't look like her, have their love on TV in your Hollywoods and around the world, how some of those women that are darker has a look to that love that don't look like them as a thriving love. And some of those women that are stay-at-home moms are the most miserable. They have husbands that have no emotional depth. A lot of their husbands or men of power, which is going to be exposed here soon, have no sense of security, have no sense of deep wisdom and knowledge, have no sense of emotional intelligence, have no sense or awareness of even, when I say security, a lot of their belief systems will crumble because, and are crumbling right now, as you see patriarchally, because of their sense of security is only surface, it's only physical, it's only tangible, it's only money. And that's what you see in a lot of these communities. So don't be fucking fooled. And tell me I'm fucking lying. I know it all. I see it all day. I see it all day. In your sports, for these men to treat those athletes the way they do, that's a false sense of empowerment. Get in those positions and then tell those boys, which are still little boys in them, yell at them, scream at them. Y'all don't realize that's a false sense of empowerment. Yell at them, scream at them, treat them like shit. Adding on to what the country has treated them like. If you think these systems in place, when it represents the wounded patriarchal, all of it represents it. All of it represents it. The wounded masculinity. Oh yeah, let me get deep into that too. Your real estate, what else? The sports on all levels, the communities, the judges, all of them. All of them. All of them who have falsely or just through their mass incarcerations. Yep. Yep, 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 yep. Yep, yep, yep. Yep. Schooling, communities, all that. I moved into communities and only seen people that were lighter shade than me, knowing that specifically, knowing the history, how they were sundown towns. They created that town specifically to keep people out that look like me. And it literally mirrored back so much of their insecurities when they see me walk around, when they see me confidently be who I am, and so far. So for some of those elders, those men, certain nationalities that are lighter shade, that's their greatest fear. To see a younger man like that, knowing that they cannot physically do anything. So they, through their wounded ego, through their false empowerment, try to see what it is that they can do to eliminate, um, make sure they gatekeep and keep them from progressing. This is what happens in your sports. This is what happens in your politicals. This is what happens in like so many places. Then you got your house jiggers who are right beside them because of their false sense of empowerment too. You have pastors and preachers in the hood in certain places who purposely are there to not even want to see the woman rise. So they it's almost like they harvest and feed off that shit, knowing that they all come from a woman. So they buy it or pretty much sold themselves out to be in this position so that they can thrive, and all of that shit is crumbling. That's why you're gonna see so many people walk away from the church because the origins of that was never created for that. It's funny how all this shit people think they've done, they gotten nowhere. They've gotten nowhere. That's why you're gonna see exactly what this country has done. They have went nowhere. I don't care how much they build fast. I don't care what they create, what it is they're doing. It will look similarly. It will look like desperation. The origins of people who built certain things built this shit from security off bricks, stones, and shit. The origins of those people were darker. It may have been people of a lighter shade that would support until they came into the picture, but now what do you see? They're building shit so fast and so rapidly out of nothing. You can't rape the land and steal resources and do all this. There not be a pushback eventually. This is what they're scared of now. This is what a lot of people are scared of karmically. It's the pushback. It's the scales balancing out. It's the energy given to them that are what they gave out. How dare we not be angry or afraid? You want me to choose peace? We're in a spiritual war. You want me to, and that's going to trickle on to the physical. That's why a lot of people don't realize how a lot of things are going to be an uproar to restore balance in nature and humanity. Imagine giving out that same energy and thinking that it ain't going to return. You're wanting people to choose peace. Imagine, man, it's so funny. What was I getting to? So the thing, the healing that's being restored to balance is that you have to see so much of what created the corporations and people, the powers that used to be. You have to see the energy play out of what was keeping people in survival, only for that forth to be brought forth another sense of security. Same goes with the sexuality. You have to see an exploitation in how women, knowingly or unknowingly, through the false perception, the illusion, or the misconception of how they should even use their sexual, or like their sexuality, or even their, sexual sacred energy. You have to see an exploitation in that. Same thing with their power. You have to see that to dismember, to disempower something, to remove, and all that. You have to see where the power has been going, the attention, the pleasures, only for that to be restored. This is one of the most hated things amongst men of all shades that will do anything in their power, their so-called false empowerment, which they cannot stop anymore, to make sure that women and even the businesses, the corporations, even in through their politics and their religion and so forth, you will see the power struggle, how self-righteous they have become, their greed, their false empowerment, of how much they love themselves more than they love. They love their materials. They love themselves in such an unrighteous way that you will see how much they just love self and not for the collective, not for humanity, even so much of not even for the children, but we all, as the mother that create the children, innocence, you will see where so clearly of how the power has been stripped purposefully. What else? The love, even how man or the false empower, the false perception of what love represents. That's why it's so the focus is so focused on the it has been so focused on sex because they want you to believe that that's how the first thing love is implemented. That's women and men, as little boys. It's brought you young from that chakra place, from that lower. If I can get you young, if people can do that, the focus for our children is to get them in a place of being in a place of survival. Then guess what ended up happening? Then this is where they're longing for a place of stability. So that's why you can move out of the hood, or you can move somewhere physically, but if you haven't done the internal, if you haven't done an internal work, if you haven't tried to find a sense of safety and security within yourself, you see this play out energetically in relationships, in partnerships, and so forth. That's what ends up happening. That's why a lot of people are targeted. This is why a lot of things happen, because what you see again in a lot of those demographics of darker people, their sense of security has been placed in the hands of the powers that used to be, the powers that ain't, and people who've been in this false empowerment or in these positions to give off um, them actually wanting them to thrive beyond survival and poverty. So they've been purposely positioned there through the hidden hand of people that y'all don't see, just so they can keep humanity and people at a lower state. That's all what poverty is. It's all representation of the lower chakra and the lower aspect of life. You know, and evolution is always going to happen. So again, if you keep women more focused on external things rather than their internal power, being rooted in things that connects them through their lineage and ancestral, then all of those things that from the root all the way up to the crown, for one, they won't have the mental clarity to be able to receive the codes, or to receive how to connect to themselves and to source, to the creator. Then most importantly, if there's an imbalance where it starts at the root, then that throws off how they use their sexuality, to question their sexuality, to even create from a place of safety and security rather than survival, to know their power, and also to be aligned with love, to come from a place of love. So what you have seen displayed is that humanity and people, especially me from experience knowing people that are darker, not all of them, but certain demographics, from one, you've had them live in a society and even through generations looping through survival. So guess what that creates? That creates a false identity in security. So they've been generationally trying to find security in a lot of things. And so when they're given these said resources that are not even healthy, but just keeps them in looping through survival, that throws off not only their power to be or to belong, but they don't really have a sense of security, which is connected to the sense of self and love. They don't have a healthy communication because they're imbalanced. So it's basically like a tree. How can a tree blossom or even grow if the roots are not nourished? So how can you not nourish the origins of what created this country or people, or even what reflects humanity, and expect to thrive as a people, as humanity? But you give out this false illusion as if you're thriving. How? When deep down, and or what's not being said, there's so much not being said. Like I said, the communities that people have created to be so passive aggressive shows the false empowerment, the false sense of security. Y'all thinking that y'all want a life that someone else lives and don't even realize they're surviving too. And you think that just because they have more resources, that they're not surviving. Listen, if you don't water the roots, the fruit is just as rotten or just as impure. And this nation is impure in its beliefs, in its morals and principles. This isn't a country and surrounding areas that have morals and principles. They don't honor that. They don't actually give women honesty. They're not telling women the truth about, their spirituality or their lineage and where they come from and the importance of the powerful women that came before them. They're not giving the attention when they are in these places where they're giving birth to the nations, to the children. You got certain communities that are they're giving more aid and support than those certain different places. So what the fuck? That's how we pretending like this ain't a thing. Then with that, they're not the pleasures of life. You got women in certain communities that have, when they get more resources and have more access to certain things, they're able to enjoy the pleasures of life. But let me tell y'all, especially darker women, those who are in certain areas, these women that are living in these communities, they don't know what the pleasures of life is. They don't know the natural sense of joy, the euphoria of life that comes from within. That's what the pleasures of life is. When you look at the chakra system, the sexuality of soul, when I say sexuality, there's so many perspectives around that because of the experience. When I say survival, there's an experience behind that. When it comes to different classes of people, the survival can look different. When I'm talking about um, security, that looks different for everyone. So how dare people tell us not to take back and call back our power to a country that our ancestors fucking created? How dare we not walk away and love people at a distance? I'm grateful for what I experienced in this country. I'm grateful for the connections. I'm grateful. But I've always known that loving myself more and prioritizing my well-being was always and has always been what's been vital to the progression and to the thriving and to the evolution of not only man but woman and humanity. So when I look at love and how it's been displayed, that's not authentic. That's not integrity. That's not morality. That's not something that's rooted in truth and honesty. When I look at how our women haven't been given honesty, the truth about what, just truth in general. Y'all been living in countries and places where your leaders, things that reflect you all, your communities and so forth, that uphold injustice, um, pride and ego over truth and love, over honesty, over authenticity. Y'all have enabled that. How is it integrity for you to build a community, walk your dogs, and do all these things, knowing that right across the tracks, you will never drive through there, and if you drive through there, you're gonna lock your doors because of just the fear of your subconscious fear of something happening to you. When that little boy, that little girl has no intentions. I'm not saying other people, due to their survival, won't do certain things. But how is that any different? How is there any energy any different where people are hired to specifically go out to attack, to brutalize other people, to make sure that they don't come into their communities? Where the fuck are y'all living? What is this? You cage your communities, you cage your shit, and then you build prisons to cage. You cage your animals, you cage everything to keep it in and keep other things out. Sounds like to me subconsciously your mind is caged. Metaphorically speaking, you're caged. But yet, like I told my partner, I said, certain communities have so many trees where they can breathe in so much oxygen, and you go to the hood, all of the things are cut off, things are cut away, literally to keep people needing, which is not healthy. It's like literally y'all in this country have literally created things so that darker people in certain demographics can trauma bond with you. That's your false sense of empowerment. You call that power. And even the ones that are darker that sit right beside them and go to their schools and acting like nothing's ever happening. But yet, when you need a certain athlete, when you know that this person is gonna come along and change your school, or they're the next this and that, the next player this and that, that's when you go fishing for your false empowerment to gain more capital, to gain more money, to build your fucking wounded ego and your false empowering empires that are crumbling right before you. Removing the very things that keep those people naturally connected to themselves in those demographics. But we sit back and act like this ain't happening. Y'all do it every day to be so passive aggressive, but yet so oddly envious and jealous that you can't be a part. You want, I see this all the time with certain people, a lot of shit. You want so much of to be a part. How could I say? Yeah, it says this in this book. It says, so the root chakra is like not only just survival. Let me show you how shit is so fucking twisted. You pretend it's these certain communities that are dressed up so well that you are thriving, yet deep in your soul, you desperately want to connect with people that are darker, to be in the cookout, to go to those clubs, to even want to connect, even want to dress. This is not everyone, but y'all know where I'm getting at. To be so much like them. You don't even realize that a lot of your ancestrally, a lot of you, not all of you, have so much of this deep hatred to a point in time. They live amongst each other, but then again, something long down the line, somebody felt like they could not live amongst each other anymore, and you do the same thing now. You do the same thing now. Now that it's coming to a head, now all of a sudden, the videos are coming out, the media, or whatever it is. Now all these things that are happening is forcing people to either evolve or die. And when I say die in a metaphorical sense, it's like in the sense of like dying away, like a flower withering away. That's what's going to happen, and is already happening with your country. The world as you knew it, your belief systems and so forth, your reign of terror, everything, is literally withering away. And again, through evolution, in order for people to thrive again, or some may say survive, or to live, you will have to connect with the very thing that you hated, or live amongst the very thing that you didn't want to. And that's where the illusion of control and manipulation comes in, when people just, oh, I gotta, I want, they can live here, but not all of them, or keep them there. And as interesting as it may be, divine judgment is at play. Peace and blessings. Shalom.